I still remember the wind that night. Cold, sharp, carrying the sound of the waves crashing far below. My husband's hand was tight around mine, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Pretend we're dead." That was the moment I realized our son wasn't trying to scare us. He was trying to end us. I had always believed that love, especially a parent's love, could forgive anything. But nothing prepares you for the day your own child looks at you like a stranger, or worse, like an obstacle. If you're hearing my story, I just want you to know sometimes the people you give your life to can become the reason you fight to survive. It all began 3 months before that night on the cliff, back when I still believed our son loved us, and before I learned how dangerous love can become when money and pride get involved. Before everything fell apart, we were just a small, ordinary family. My husband Richard and I had built our lives around our only son, Evan. He was our pride, our hope, our everything. When he was little, he used to run into my arms every time I came home from work. "Mom," he'd say, "one day I'll buy you a big house by the sea." And I'd smile, brushing the hair from his eyes, never realizing how one day that same sea would nearly take our lives. Richard was a quiet man, gentle, patient, the kind of father every child deserves. He'd fix Evan's toys when they broke, stay up late helping with school projects, and whisper that family was the only thing that truly mattered. We didn't have much, but we had love, and that was enough. Years passed, and Evan grew into a man who seemed ambitious and restless. He studied business, left home early, and always talked about wanting more. More money, more success, more control. At first, we were proud. He'd call sometimes, a short, polite calls. "Hey, Mom, Dad, I'm doing fine. Work's busy." Then months would pass without a word. I told myself he was just busy living his life. That's what children do. But deep down, something in me missed the boy who used to leave me handwritten notes saying, "Don't forget to smile today." When he finally came back to visit after 3 years, he wasn't the same. He arrived in an expensive car wearing a suit that looked too sharp for our quiet little town. He hugged us, but it was the kind of hug that feels practiced, not warm. At dinner, he spoke quickly, impatiently. "Mom, Dad, you've both worked hard all your life. It's time to think smart. You've got that property by the cliffs. It's just sitting there. Developers would pay a fortune for it." I looked at Richard, confused. That land wasn't just property. It was our home, the place where Richard had proposed to me, where Evan had learned to ride his bike. I said softly, "Evan, that's our family land. Your father built that cottage with his own hands." He laughed lightly. "Exactly, Mom. It's emotional value, not financial. You could live anywhere. Imagine retiring somewhere nicer. I can handle the sale. I know people." Richard frowned. "Evan, some things aren't for sale." For a moment, the room went still. Evan's jaw tightened, his eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. Then he smiled again, too quickly. "Of course, Dad. Just a suggestion." But I knew that look. It wasn't over. That night, as I washed the dishes, Richard came and stood beside me. "He's changed," he said quietly. "I know," I whispered, "but he's still our son." Richard sighed. "I just hope he remembers that we're his parents, not his problem." We didn't know then that Evan's visit wasn't just about family. It was about something far darker, something that would lead us to that cliffside months later, standing between life and death. The months that followed Evan's visit felt uneasy, like a storm you can sense before the first drop of rain. He started calling often, but not to ask how we were. Every conversation circled back to one thing, the land by the cliffs. "Mom, Dad, the market's hot right now," he'd say, his voice sharp with urgency. "You could make enough to live comfortably for the rest of your lives." Richard always gave the same answer. "We are living comfortably, Evan. Money can't buy peace." Evan would laugh, the kind of laugh that doesn't reach the eyes. "Peace doesn't pay bills, Dad." It was subtle at first, the way he started visiting more, offering to help with repairs, asking about paperwork, bank details, and property taxes. He'd compliment us, then slide in questions like, "Who owns the deed exactly?" both of you, right? I wanted to believe he meant well. I told myself he was just being responsible, planning ahead. But something in my heart, that quiet mother's instinct, told me to be careful. One afternoon, Richard came inside holding a letter from the post. His face was pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. He handed me the envelope. It was from a real estate agency we had never contacted. "Thank you for your recent inquiry about selling your cliffside property," it said. "Our representative, Mr. Evan Miller, will be in touch soon." My hands trembled. "He's trying to sell it," I whispered. Richard clenched his jaw. "Not without our signatures, he won't." That night, Evan came by. When Richard showed him the letter, Evan didn't deny it. He just smiled, calm as ever. "Come on, Dad. It was just an evaluation." "I'm trying to help you see your options by pretending to be us," Richard said quietly. Evan's face hardened. "You don't understand how business works." "No," Richard replied. "I understand perfectly. You're trying to take what isn't yours." Evan stood up, pushing his chair back sharply. "Fine. Keep your precious land, but don't expect me to keep watching you waste it." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The echo stayed long after he was gone. Weeks passed with no word. Then one morning, Evan called, his voice suddenly soft again. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I overstepped. Let's have dinner together." Just like old times, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe our son still had love left in his heart. So we agreed. He invited us to the cliffs, saying he wanted to show us something special, a new viewing spot near the old cottage where he had a surprise planned. When we arrived, the wind was strong. The sea crashed violently against the rocks below. Evan was waiting near the edge, smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. "Look," he said, pointing toward the horizon. "This view, imagine what someone would pay for it." Richard looked uneasy. "Evan, enough. We're not selling." Evan turned, his smile fading. "Dad, you're being stubborn. You're both getting old. What happens when you can't take care of yourselves anymore? You'll just let this place rot?" "We'll manage," I said quietly. "It's not about the money." Evan's eyes grew cold, darker than I'd ever seen. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Maybe you should let go before someone forces you to." My heart skipped. "Evan, what are you saying?" He looked at me. No warmth, no hesitation. Then without another word, he stepped closer to the edge, motioning us forward. "Come look, Mom." "You'll understand what I mean." Richard grabbed my hand. "Stay back," he whispered. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Evan's eyes flickered with something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not love, just calculation. Richard pulled me back, his voice shaking. "Evan, stop this." And that's when it happened. Evan shoved, quick, hard, sudden. Richard stumbled and I screamed as we both slipped on the loose rocks. The world spun. The sea roared beneath us. For a heartbeat, I thought it was the end. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, everything hurt. I was lying on a ledge below the cliff, the waves crashing dangerously close. Richard was beside me, bruised but breathing. He pressed his hand to mine, his voice a whisper. "Pretend we're dead." When I woke again, it was night. The sound of waves crashed against the cliff below us, echoing like thunder in the dark. My body ached everywhere. My head was bleeding. The salt air stung the wound. Richard was lying beside me, breathing shallowly. His arm was twisted awkwardly, but his eyes were open, calm, focused, unshaken. "Don't move too much," he whispered. "He might still be up there." My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the sea. For a moment, I couldn't understand what he meant. Then the memory hit me like the cold water below. Evan, our son, his hands, the shove. He pushed us," I stammered, my voice trembling. Richard nodded grimly. "I know, but he thinks we fell. He thinks we're gone." He grabbed my hand, his grip steady despite the shaking in his body. "We can use that. If he believes we're dead, he won't come looking." I looked up at the cliff. It was high, too high to climb without light or strength. The wind howled above us, scattering loose gravel into the dark sea. The world felt merciless. We need to move before the tide rises, Richard said. There's a cave along the lower side of the rocks. I saw it earlier this year while fishing. Every step hurt. My legs trembled with every movement, but somehow we made it, inch by inch, gripping the wet stones, leaning on each other. The cave was small, hidden behind a curtain of hanging seaweed. It smelled of damp earth and salt. Inside, Richard tore a piece of his shirt to stop the bleeding on my forehead. His hands shook, not from fear, but from pain and exhaustion. We'll rest here for a bit, he said softly. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I just sat there, shivering, listening to the sea crashing outside, the same sea that had almost swallowed us. Why, Richard? I finally whispered. How could our son do this? He looked at me, eyes hollow, voice low, because we taught him love without limits, and he mistook it for weakness. The words broke me. Hours passed. The sky began to pale. Dawn. Through the slit of the cave, I saw seagulls circling above the cliffs, and then faintly, I heard voices. Search the area, one of them said. They could have fallen into the water. Evan, I froze. His voice echoed down the rocks, calm, cold, controlled. They're gone, another man, probably a friend, replied. There's no way they survived that fall. Evan sighed. Good. Let the tide take what's left. My heart stopped. He wasn't just careless. He was certain that his parents were dead. Richard squeezed my hand tightly, silently warning me not to move. We waited, barely breathing, until the footsteps faded. Only then did I allow the tears to fall. They came quietly, not from fear anymore, but from heartbreak. I wasn't mourning my near death. I was mourning my son, the boy who used to hold my hand when the waves frightened him. When the sun finally rose, Richard spoke again. We can't go back home. He'll come looking once he realizes the bodies weren't found. Then where do we go? I asked weakly. To someone who can help, he said. But first we stay hidden until nightfall. We waited until darkness returned. Then, using a broken branch as a walking stick, we climbed, slowly, painfully, back up the side of the cliffs far from where we fell. By midnight, we reached the old service road that led into the woods. We found an abandoned cabin near the edge of the forest, one Richard used to visit with his friend during fishing season. The key was still hidden under the loose rock where he'd left it years ago. Inside, it was cold, dusty, but safe. Richard made a small fire in the stove. I wrapped myself in an old blanket, watching him with 1,000 unspoken questions. Do you think he'll tell anyone? I asked finally. He shook his head. No, not yet. He'll wait for the news to spread. An accident. Then he'll move fast to claim the insurance, the property, everything. His calm frightened me more than the fall itself. So what do we do? He looked at me, his eyes fierce, alive with purpose. We survive, and we make sure the truth doesn't die with us. The next morning, Richard walked to the nearby town. He borrowed an old phone from a fisherman friend, using a name no one would recognize. He called our lawyer, an honest man we'd known for years, and explained in careful words that there had been a family issue. The lawyer promised to meet us quietly, without alerting anyone. When he arrived 2 days later and saw us alive, his face went pale. Good Lord, he whispered, the whole town thinks you're gone. They said your car was found near the cliffs. Evan filed a missing persons report. Of course he did, Richard said, to make it official. We told him everything, from the arguments to the push. The lawyer listened without interrupting. When we finished, he exhaled deeply. This is going to take care and patience, he said. We'll need proof before we go to the police. If you accuse him without evidence, he'll twist the story. You'll become the confused old couple who fell, and he'll become the grieving son. He was right. So we waited, quietly, patiently, for days, then weeks. From the cabin window, I watched the world go on without us. News spread about our death. There was even a small article in the local paper. Elderly couple presumed dead after cliffside accident. Evan had won. At least that's what he thought. but he didn't know that the parents he tried to erase were still breathing, and one day soon he would face the truth. Days turned into weeks, and in that hidden cabin, time felt different, slower, quieter, heavier. Richard spent his days writing everything down, dates, words, memories of that night, while I listened to the old radio, catching whispers of the world that had already moved on. The newspaper said our memorial service would be next Sunday. Our own son had written a heartfelt obituary. Devoted parents, gone too soon, it said. Reading it, my hands trembled, not because of grief, but disbelief. He sounded sincere, as if the man who pushed us off that cliff truly believed his lie. Richard folded the paper and set it down. He's smart, he said softly, too smart. He's controlling the story before anyone asks questions. And what can we do? I asked. We have no photos, no proof, nothing but our word. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into the small bag he'd carried from the cliffs. Inside, wrapped in a piece of cloth, was his old pocket camera, scratched, dented, but still intact. I dropped it when he pushed us, he said, but I picked it up before we hid in the cave. The memory card might still work. We held our breath as he slid it into the lawyer's laptop the next morning. The first few photos were of the ocean, then us, smiling. Then one final blurry image, Evan standing behind us, reaching forward, half his face, one outstretched hand, and the shadow of a push. It wasn't perfect evidence, but it was something. Our lawyer, Mr. Carter, leaned back slowly. This might be enough to open a case, he said, but we'll need more. Witnesses, phone records, maybe even his confession. Richard nodded. He'll slip. He always does. We decided to stay dead for now, to let Evan believe he had succeeded. The plan was dangerous but simple. He would return home, dig into Evan's actions quietly, and expose him without warning. When Richard left that morning, I held his hand longer than usual. Be careful, I whispered. He's still our son. He looked at me, tired, gentle, resolute. No, Mary, he said softly. He was our son. Now, he's something else. 3 days later, I heard the sound of tires outside the cabin. My heart leapt. For a moment, I thought Richard had come back early. But when the door opened, it wasn't him. It was Evan. He stood in the doorway, eyes wild, clothes rumpled, as if he hadn't slept in days. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He just stared, pale, trembling, speechless. Mom, he finally whispered, you're alive. I could barely breathe. He stepped closer. I thought you, I took a step back, my voice shaking. You thought you finished what you started. His face twisted. No, you don't understand. It wasn't supposed to. Stop, I shouted, the first time my voice had been loud in months. You pushed us, Evan. You looked your own parents in the eyes and tears filled his eyes. It was an accident. I swear. I was angry. I just wanted you to listen. By killing us? He dropped to his knees, sobbing. I didn't mean to. I panicked. I thought you were gone and you filed a report. You planned a funeral. You took our money, I said quietly. His sobs grew louder, desperate, broken. I thought I could fix everything. I didn't want to lose everything. The sound of a car stopped outside. Richard stepped in, his face pale but steady. Hello, son, he said. Evan froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Behind Richard, 2 police officers appeared. Mr. Carter had gone straight to them once Richard confirmed Evan's location. The officers read him his rights as he tried to reach for me. Mom, please don't let them take me. I didn't mean it. But I didn't move. I just watched, the way a mother watches a stranger wearing her child's face. When they led him out, I turned away. I didn't want my last memory of my son to be the one I saw in that moment, wild, frightened, and small. Richard came to my side and held my hand. We said nothing. The silence said everything. Days later, the police confirmed what we already knew. Evan had transferred our savings, sold property, and planned to leave the country. The case was airtight. The world saw him as a criminal. But I saw him as something far more tragic. a son who lost himself to greed. Months passed. We returned to our home by the coast. The cliff looked different now, peaceful, not cruel. I stood there one evening, feeling the wind brush my face, the sea whisper below. Richard came beside me. Do you regret it? He asked softly. I shook my head. No, we survived. That's all that matters, he nodded. He was our son, Mary. But sometimes love means knowing when to let go. I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle in. Maybe we hadn't died that day, but something had. Our innocence, our faith in family, our belief that love always protects. Still, we were alive, scarred, shaken, but alive. And as the sun dipped into the horizon, I whispered to the wind, You can rest now, Richard. He can't hurt us anymore. He smiled faintly, squeezing my hand. No, my love, not anymore. The waves crashed below, gentle this time, almost forgiving, because sometimes survival isn't just about breathing. It's about learning to live again after the world you knew disappears. And that's exactly what we did. We started over, two souls reborn from the edge of a cliff. Sometimes the deepest pain doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the ones we gave everything to. That day, when our own son pushed us toward death, he thought he was ending our story. But what he really ended was the part of us that still believed love can't be cruel. We learned something the hard way. You can forgive, but you don't have to return to the fire that burned you. So if you're listening to this right now and someone you love has broken your trust, remember this. You still deserve peace, even if it means walking away. Because sometimes survival isn't about staying alive. It's about finally choosing yourself. If this story touched your heart, leave a little heart in the comments. Your stories matter too, and maybe someone out there needs to hear yours.